welcome to another special guest Saturday here on Sport Report, brought to you by Sportlight, where every week we connect with the top minds in the field of sport. This week, we welcome to our table Mr. Karlton Creech, Vice Chancellor of Athletics at the University of Denver, who has a unique way of creating a positive culture for his coaches. Stay tuned to hear how Karlton puts the spotlight on sport administration. Hey everyone, I'm Meg, and you all know my brilliant co-host, Dr. G, and this is Sportlight. Today we have a very special guest. We're joined by Mr. Karlton Creech, the University of Denver's very own Vice Chancellor of Athletics and Recreation. Karlton has officially been a pioneer for about 3 years now and brings over 2 decades of sport administration experience to the position. Welcome, Karlton.
Thanks, Meg. Great to see you, and thanks for having me on.
Great to see you. Thanks for joining us. What we'd like to do in the beginning is just, we'd love to hear your story about how you kind of got interested in the field and kind of the steps you took to get to this great place at University of Denver.
Sure. Well, you know, I'm not, I don't come to this with a high level of pedigree in college athletics. I wasn't an athlete. I wasn't a coach. I was a kid who grew up in a college town that loved college sports. I grew up in Chapel Hill, North Carolina. And at the time when I was growing up, we didn't have any professional sports franchises in the state of North Carolina yet. The Charlotte Hornets hadn't emerged yet as the first NBA team in North Carolina. And so everything about sports in my world was all about college sports. And we were in a hotbed of college sports in that area of North Carolina. So I kind of grew up with it inside me. And when I graduated from college, I actually figured out there's this whole industry behind the games that happen on Wednesday night and Saturday, and that I could actually have a career in this industry if I worked hard and applied myself. And so that's exactly what I did. I accepted an internship in the ticket office at the University of North Carolina right out of college. And I was so good that I was an intern for 2 years before they hired me full-time. But I ended up getting a full-time job. And from there, really just worked my way up in the industry by taking opportunities as they came and doing the very best I could in the moment. So I had experience in fundraising and capital project management. My last 2 years at North Carolina, I was the chief of staff for the athletic director, which is an incredible experience. And then got my first AD job in 2014 at the University of Maine, which was an incredible experience. I was there for 4 years and learned an awful lot, a lot of on-the-job training there as being an athletic director for the first time. And then was so grateful to have an opportunity at the University of Denver job when it came available almost 3 years ago now. And like you said, I've been here about 2.5 years and have enjoyed every minute of it. It's been an incredible experience, an incredible place with incredible people like Dr. Garrity, and I'm just grateful to be here, and it's been a lot of fun.
Oh, he's already sucking up to you, Brian.
Butter up the faculty is always a great idea too. We love flattery. No. You touched on something pretty basic. You're humble in the sense of a lot of people start off in ticket sales and then making their way into athletic administration, operations, finance, wherever that might be. And you have to pay your dues.
You do, and a lot of our entry-level jobs in athletics are high turnover jobs, right? They're almost burnout jobs. You're working a lot of hours, you're working nights and weekends, and you're just grinding your way into the industry. And that's what I did, and that's what most of my peers and colleagues have done. And it's I think you learn a lot doing that. It does humble you, and you gotta pay attention and be dedicated to the lifestyle more than anything. This is not a 9 to 5 Monday through Friday what we do. And so you've really got to be dedicated to the lifestyle and make sure it's something you really want to do. And if you do, it's rewarding, but there is a lot to it.
So what advice would you give students or coaches or other people that are interested in maybe following that same path and going into administration?
Get started. I talk to so many of student athletes here, people that come to me and say, have that same question. And they say, I want to be an athletic director. And I say, great. It only took me 20 years to get there, right? You only have to work your way through the industry for 20 years. So you've got to start. That's the big thing. And it doesn't really matter where you start. You can start in compliance or ticket sales like I did, or athletic training, whatever it is. Get your start. But then as soon as you can, start to diversify. I think a diversified portfolio of experience is really important in this industry if you want to move up into administrative positions. And having not expertise in every area, but at least an awareness of every area. Because when you start leading a division or leading a department within an athletic department, it's not just a singular focus. You have a lot of areas of focus, and you need some level of knowledge of all of them.
I find it really interesting that you don't, like, you were not, I assume you were somewhat of an athlete, but you weren't on the athletic track to play in college. And I think a lot of people feel that if they aren't on that track, then they can't really go into anything in sport. And there are so many positions that really are behind the scenes, as you say. So we're hoping to open that up for a lot of viewers.
Well, yeah, I'm kind of proof that anybody can do it. I was a high school athlete. I loved sports. I loved playing sports. I was not blessed with height, speed, or talent. And so my athletic career ended pretty quick, but after high school, but anybody can get into the industry. You just have to be willing to do the work and willing to take the opportunities that come your way. I never would have told you 20 years ago I was going to live in Maine for 4 years, right? But that opportunity came my way. And I'll never forget, I talked to Bubba Cunningham, who was the athletic director of North Carolina at the time where I was working. I said, Bubba, what's your advice? What should I do? And he said, look, you can stay here and work with me for as long as you want to work. Or you can go push yourself and take a chance and take an opportunity and go be the athletic director at the University of Maine. He said, now you tell me, are you going to be a better person and a better leader 5 years from now, taking that opportunity and that chance and proving yourself, or staying here with me? It was an obvious decision, and it's great advice I'll never forget. You've got to push yourself.
Can you speak a little bit about that? Because, right, knowing when you left North Carolina, right, you left at a good time. It was very opportunistic in a way that there were some academic concerns going on at UNC. We talk about it in the classroom. It's not surprise. It's news that's out there. And I knew when I left coaching, I left Tennessee, it was at a good time too. You could kind of just tell. Did that influence your decision to take that step to go to Maine?
It didn't, Brian. I had been looking for about 6 months. I had interviewed for a couple of other jobs, didn't get them. Came close in the second interview, finished second for that job. But Maine was the first job that I was offered. First athletic director job after, and I have to say, Bubba was incredibly supportive, right? And he's one of those people in our industry who wants you to succeed, and he wants you to build your own portfolio and be your own leader. And he was very helpful in me. Now, leaving him at that time was tough for him because, right, we were in the middle of a battle at that time at North Carolina, and things weren't going well, and there was a lot on everybody's plate. We were rebuilding a lot of systems and functions to make things much better than they had been, and in a way that they needed to be. So to ask him to help me leave him at that time was very difficult for him, but he didn't blink an eye. He helped me. He understood. He had been there himself years before. I don't think what was going on at North Carolina really played much of a role in leaving there. I certainly wasn't going to leave a place just to leave a place. It had to be I was going towards something. And going towards that first opportunity to be an athletic director was what it ended up being. I was interested too when you talk about your skills, right? Because you do have obviously skills. You were in not only sales, but then advancement, fundraising, capital projects. For a lot of folks that don't realize how that works, what does that mean? What does that entail? And obviously you were successful at that because you guys generated, too, millions of dollars and built new buildings and those sorts of things. Yeah, well, in North Carolina, where I spent most of my career, we had great structures too, right? We had large mechanisms for fundraising and ticket sales and all those things. And so I was part of a much larger effort when I was working there. When I go to somewhere like Maine, we had one fundraiser, right? So I was more kind of boots on the ground immediately there and having to pull some of those skills out of the closet that maybe I hadn't used in a few years. But what it all boils down to, Brian, I've found in anything we do is trying to be a good person, be respectful of other people, and try to build some relationships along the way. The University of Maine just got a transformational $90 million gift to their athletic department, 2 years after I left. Those things don't happen quickly. And I left, the new athletic director came in, he had to start that relationship that I had left off with that family foundation, and it all worked. But I think the real transformational things that happen in our industry don't happen quickly. They're not easy, and you need a lot of help to get them done. And so it's trying to figure out how to build relationships with the people around you.
Specifically for people that are listening, what I at least found doing some research is you were able to bring in 1.5 million, but the gift they just received was for $90 million.
Correct. Yeah. And I had, about a year before I left there, I had done a proposal to their foundation for a number a little bit more than that, kind of as a multi-year transformational gift. And you can ask for that. No one's going to say yes to that right away. And so I think it took years of work to get them to the point where the $90 million gift came true. And but again, they're an incredible foundation in the state of Maine and dedicated to higher education. And the 90 million was a percentage of the total gift they gave to the entire state of Maine. They gave $500 million to higher education in Maine, which was an incredibly generous and transformative gift.
There was a lot of work that went on. Anyone can come on and have someone hand over the check. That's years of work that went into that, probably even before you. So it's kudos to all of you that are working on it, for sure.
And with philanthropy, people have lots of options on where to give. Lots of options, more options than they've ever had before. And there's so much need in our world when it comes to philanthropy. And so you really have to be careful and detailed and diligent when you're out trying to attract those kinds of gifts.
What do you think is the most important thing to remember when you're out talking to people about the school, trying to raise money? I mean, is there something in particular that you keep your eye on when having these kind of discussions and building these relationships?
Well, I think every person you communicate with is different, right? And the first thing you have to do is understand their angle. Where is their interest? Where is their passion? And how can maybe we find a common ground where it'll work? So I think, if I was going to talk to somebody who loved to help build buildings about scholarships, that's probably not a real wise move, right? You've got to identify the donor's interest, their level of interest, and where we can find some common ground. And when you do that, I think it becomes much more of a relationship and not me asking you for money, right? It's how can we help each other? How can I help you with what you're interested in supporting? And what is the platform we can give you to offer that support?
When you mentioned moving to Maine, I was kind of curious, right? So you moved to Maine. What are some of those on-the-job learning experiences that you talked about? And I would imagine talking to other coaches and administrators, you're never really nobody's ever really fully for almost anything.
No, and the biggest change for me was having over 100 people that I'm responsible for, right? That are in an organization that now I'm leading and that I feel responsible. And that was employees. And then, we had over 350 student athletes that I'm also ultimately responsible for at that point. That was new for me. I'd never had that level of personnel that I was leading. And so it's time consuming. It took a lot of time. I tried to be very intentional and diligent. I had an individual meeting with every staff member when I got there, and just did the same thing here when I came to Denver, just really trying to humanize the relationship. The new AD, the new guy, just wanted them to know, hey, I'm just a regular guy like you, and try to build those relationships early on. I do a lot of walking around too, just to say hello to people when I have breaks in between meetings. I try not to just sit still. I try to get up and get out and walk around. But you learn so much, Brian. I had, budget responsibility, being a member of at Maine, a president's cabinet here, being a member of a chancellor's cabinet. I had never had that experience before. I'm the least educated guy in the room, right? It's intimidating. I've got PhDs and brilliant researchers and people all around me. And so that was a new experience, but one I've enjoyed tremendously. So there's so many new experiences when you become an AD.
And that was one of the hardest transitions for me, actually, too, was leaving, pro sports or D1 sports for higher ed, where you're moving at a slug's pace, and you've got so many so-called smart people that have to put their fingerprint on some decision making, and you're just like, I can't believe we have to make decisions now and move, and we're headed in the right direction to win and to do the right things. And that's not the same in higher ed. It's way more fractured, I'd say.
Yeah, it's a big part of I think what I do now a lot of the time is I'm that buffer between anxious, go get them, want to win coaches and athletes versus the larger community we operate within. And I'm that buffer between those two. And so I try to tell the story to both sides. Hey, we need to speed up. This is urgent. Hey, there's a process for this. Be patient, right? I'm communicating both sides of the equation all at the same time.
Yeah, and a lot of people don't. I mean, I know you taught classes too, so you have classroom experience, and you have a master's degree in management as well.
Yeah, I tell you what, one of the most fun things I did at Maine, I became friends with the executive in residence of the Maine Business School, a guy named Sean McKenna. Wonderful man, and unfortunately, we lost Sean a couple of years ago. But he was teaching a class that he called personal brand, but it's actually a class about personal leadership, personal responsibility, having a vision, having values, having a plan for your life. And I had been doing similar work on my own for a few years, and I met Sean and it just all clicked. And he said, hey, I'm getting too many students in this class. Would you help me teach it? And wow, what an offer. And so I helped him teach it for a semester, and then we ended up splitting it into 2 sections. I had my own class, and I ended up teaching it after Sean passed away. And it was an incredible experience. I got so much out of it. The interaction with the students, I thought I was there to teach them. And most of the time I was the one learning something, so it was a great experience. And I hope to get back in the classroom again one day.
The NCAA too, like and other life champ skills programs have had the branding as their thing, right? You need to protect your brand. And I find that to be an interesting and kind of revealing way of talking about today's society, that has a certain kind of capitalistic economy to it. And it's not just living a good life or becoming educated or learning how to lead, it's protect your brand and then exploit that for economic gain.
Yeah, and we're going to see it more and more. I fully expect the NCAA to pass new name, image, and likeness legislation that's going to be much more permissive for student athletes to capitalize, especially on their social media platforms. What I loved about Sean at Maine and the class he was teaching is he called it personal brand, but his definition of personal brand is your brand is the person you are, right? Not what your Twitter account says, or not what you say, it's what you do, it's who you are. And that's what he taught. And that's why I identified with that. But yeah, it's a challenge. We're in a quick information, a cancel society, get my name out there, make my brand on social media. And part of my responsibility, I believe, is to make sure we're not dialing that back. That's a very important part of our society right now, but just make sure it's supported with some substance.
What I think is really interesting is the way that brand is really thrown around nowadays. Your brand as an athlete is like my style, my thing, my it. When these kids are going and trying to create their brand, they're like, oh, I'm going to have this beard, or I'm going to have this color in my hair. That's not really what the brand should represent. But I think that looking at all of the professional athletes making millions on their brand, I think they're trying to follow in those footsteps. And I think that one of the things we talk a lot about in coaching is your coaching philosophy. And it basically, that becomes kind of your coaching brand, as it were. And it's the values that you have when you're coaching and what's important to you. You're able to sift through things and decide, well, this is in accordance with my way of coaching. And so I think it's really important. I know that you in particular have a focus on the development of leadership skills within the athletes. And I was hoping you could kind of tell us just a little bit more about that.
Sure. And you're so right about brand, and a lot of what we're seeing now in my mind is so temporary. It's temporary brand. It's temporary success. And I'm a firm believer in culture, and culture is another buzzword that's getting used a lot right now. But culture, for me, is really what are our consistent actions over time. And culture takes a long time to build. There's never a finish line with culture. It's a work in progress every day. You have people constantly coming in and out of your organization. For us, we have 350 student athletes. We're bringing in 100 new ones and losing 100 every year, right? And so culture is not something that's easy. And it's not something that's quick. But one thing we're doing here that I'm personally dedicated to, and I want our division to be dedicated to, is this idea of positive leadership. And it's an interesting time to be talking about positive leadership in our current pandemic crisis. But we started this last September when author and speaker John Gordon came to our campus and spoke to our entire athletic division. And we followed that up with some training. I became a certified trainer in their organization, and I led our senior team in athletics through a full day-long training session of positive leadership training. It was right before the pandemic. I'm telling you, I really think it has helped. It's not perfect, right? We all have bad days. We have bad hours. There's challenges that we have to think about. How do we make those challenges into new opportunities? And we had designed this whole summer rollout of this program. We were going to do in-person training for all of our coaches, all of our student athletes, and it became pretty quick that we were going to miss that opportunity. But we didn't stop. We actually did online training for all of our coaching staff over the summer with the same program our senior leadership team had been through. And it was really beneficial. We did it by Zoom. It wasn't perfect. It was a challenge. I was leading it. But I think it's really helped some of our coaches and our leadership get through this crisis in a way maybe they wouldn't have before. Just having that mindset of, okay, it's coming at us. We can't stop that it's coming at us, but we're not going to go away and hide. We're going to find a way through it with a great attitude and figure out how to get through it and win on the other side of it. And so, we're also developing a program for our student athletes that we were going to launch in person in September. We're converting all of that material to online material now. And so we were delayed a little bit, but we hope to start getting those workshops going in November. So even in the craziest higher education crisis we've seen in our lifetime, I'm proud of our division for finding a way to move forward with an important initiative when it would have been easy to say, you know what, let's just press pause. We'll do that next year. Let's pay attention to the budget and all these things. But I'm so proud of our people that they were willing to come with me on this little journey to start the process, because in anything you're doing, the hardest thing is just to start it. And so I felt it was really important we get it started.
Speaking of getting started and dealing with positive and opportunity in a pandemic, you guys have actually added a varsity sport during this time, which people are cutting sports left and right.
It was, we've been working on that for about a year before we actually announced it, but we added women's triathlon through a grant from USA Triathlon. So we were able to add our 18th sport in a trial manner. It's not an NCAA championship sport yet. We're building towards that, but with no new expenses to the university. So with a generous grant from USA Triathlon, we were able to add a new sport. We've got a couple of student athletes starting with us. We're starting small. One of our assistant swim coaches is the head coach of triathlon. Right. But again, looking for opportunity in the face of a lot of negative, and we found a way to do that.
I love how creative everyone is getting at this time. Nobody is running and hiding. We're all trying to find better, newer ways to create what we need to get done.
Well, and you're right. And I think college athletics there's no question in my mind now, it's going to look very different moving forward. Right. We're going through some monumental changes right now, not only on the governance and legislation side, but when you look at lifestyle considerations, right? How many hours people are spending, the revelation that work can be conducted like we're conducting this interview right now, right? We can get things done and make progress virtually. And I think our industry is going to look very different. I'm not sure exactly what it's going to end up looking like, but I can tell you it's going to be different than it was a year ago.
Do you have any wisdom or counsel then for people in the field and those students or up and comers that are looking at it going, I always try to sell critical thinking, decision making, long-term and character building and those sorts of things. And it doesn't really sound very sexy, right? It's not a sexy brand, but it works.
I'm going to give you an even worse one, Coach. Be willing to work, right? You got to work hard and be willing to do the dirty jobs and things that other people aren't willing to do. that's where you move forward. And I think for people coming into our industry, coaches, young administrators, whatever it is, be willing to do the work. That's it. And you'll get recognized and you'll get opportunities.
Thanks for joining in to Sport Report. Make sure to check out part 2 of our conversation with Karlton Creech as he explains why his student athlete development program is so important to him and the players themselves. Don't forget to like, subscribe, and comment. Let's keep the discussion going to start growing.